So this is the lawn tractor meeting that we try to do once a week. And my progress since last week, I didn't do anything last week. So this week I got around and I fired up my simulator of my that simulates my little mini tractor. And the whole problem was we found out that if we run this pure pursuit software that's the standard one in the ROS one wiki, if you run that one and if you run it on a simulator, it seems to run just fine. You start it off and it does a good job of following the path. But then when you put it on a real vehicle, the real vehicle tends to wander back and forth. It kind of gets wavy, as we were saying. So it kind of oscillates back and forth when it's supposed to stay on a straight line. So I was trying to get it fired up so I can play with that. So I got as far last night. I cleared off my table. I made sure the computer would boot up, and I dug through my history to find all the command lines to get it started. I got back to the point where it would drive just normally with my old stuff. And then I started playing around trying to figure out, because number one, I have to figure out how to break the simulator, by changing. One of the things we kept looking at was steering speed. How fast can the vehicle respond to what you're telling it? And if I slow that down, it gets worse. And I haven't come on anything yet that exactly mimics what my real vehicle does, but I can play around with that some more. And after I got everything running, I just went through all my parameters and setup files, and I'm able to move my vehicle from one point to another, so I can put it right at the right in line with my path. So the first thing I start, I put it down in the world, and it's pointed right at the target path, like it's like I don't know what three just 10 meters away. I can't remember how far it is, and I can say go, and sure enough, it starts up and it drives straight to the target, like everybody wants it to. So I got to get at the point where I can break that so it's doing something funny, because I have no idea why, if it's supposed to be driving in a straight line, why it wanders off to the left and then corrects and goes back to the right. And the last time I was running, it seemed to be an oscillation that got bigger and bigger as it got closer to the point. And I can't think of any reason why it should do that. So I just need to be able to get my simulator to do that and then go through and figure out what can I do, say on the pure pursuit code, or I've modified the pure pursuit code to simplify it. And both of them will run just fine under the simulator. But both the pure pursuit and my stuff both seem to act the same way on my real vehicle, or we had to drive really slow to get it to work. And that's kind of where Al is too. As he speeds his vehicle up, it starts doing funny things to him. So I got far enough that I got the simulator to the point now. If I just sit down and play with it, I could probably at least identify why it's doing that, and then maybe come up with a way to fix that. So I guess that's all that I have to say for today.
Finding the mute button. As I said before, I tell myself sometimes if I just make one little step every day, that's good. So I think getting the simulator up and running is great, because I'm a long way away from trying to figure out why that Lyrics pure pursuit thing is not behaving the way we want it to. But anyway, let me turn on sharing here. I marked a few things down. I sort of put them in as I think I've learned. These are some things that I've sort of discovered over the past few days. So the goal is to program my GPS with a fixed position, and I needed to get that information in order to do that. So I've done a 12-hour survey, and I now have that data. The way that I got that survey was, well, let me show you a picture first. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, isn't that what they say? So this is a makeshift deal where I've got a pole and my GPS antenna, and it's stuck into piece of plastic pipe there. Although it looks like it's leaning a lot, it's not actually leaning that much because there's a little bit of a slant here. And this is the crude components of my base station. Inside of this little box is my GPS, and then a battery to run it, and then the antenna, obviously, to collect the signal. So this is not my property, but it's about 3 acres of land that a guy said, hey, go knock yourself out, do what you want to. And so I wanted to say to him, hey, can I, put this pole here more permanently? But before I did that, I wanted to know the location, and I wanted him to see a little bit about what it's going to look like. He said yes, so I now can, bury it, not the whole bucket, just the pipe, so I can plop the antenna in there whenever I come by there to cut the grass. But I needed to know what was that GPS setting. And the way I did that was I took an ESP32, I took this RS232 to TTL adapter, which will go into the GPS. So the GPS signals are coming in this way. And then I connected this ESP32 to Wi-Fi, and then I pushed out the lat/lon data for 2 messages out to a place where it could be stored. I just chose to store it in Google Sheets. And why didn't that come up? I didn't want to search for that. I just wanted you to go to that. Oh, there was some goofiness in front of that. So delete the goofiness. I'm putting it in chat. So this program basically just reads sentences as they come across the serial port and parses it. I have 2 sentences that are coming through because I wanted to compare the values for both of those, and then it I didn't know C didn't. Well, the best I could come up with in C to parse that was sort of read the whole sentence, store where the commas are, and then use that data to strip off the lat/lon and altitude. For the GGA, it's not in decimal format, so you got to go through some rigmarole to get it into decimal format. So there's some code in there to do that as well. So anyway, I think I have successfully surveyed that particular spot, and I can now go reconfigure my GPS base station to have that fixed position instead of what I had before. I also learned a little bit more about the ComNav OEM software. Previously, I had followed a guy called, a website called Deep South Robotics, and really great site, really helpful person who's behind that. And I had just programmed in to the GPS those settings, but the software has this mode. It says, hey, do you want to set a base? Do you want to set a rover? This is similar to the Novatel software that Jeff has discovered. The deal is, though, when you set the base, it does have a setting that says set the position, and it just takes the instantaneous position. It doesn't let you survey it. So I had to come up with my own way to survey it. Well, that's why I went through all that rigmarole. anyway, this was helpful to find some additional functionality of this OEM software. And so now, later today, I'll go collect my GPS and reprogram it. And for the base station, I'll now have this fixed position and then go back and put in the correction, 5 or so correction sentences. I also looked, there's a number of heading messages for my GPS, and I discovered that they don't latch. By latching, I mean they don't report the last good heading. They just bounce around because the GPS is moving a bit. So anyway, what else did I want to show you? Oh, I updated my Miro board just a smidgen. So this is the Miro board a few people have seen. And I was looking at my base station, and so I've got the GPS and this 9-pin RS-232 output from the GPS, and I have this RS-232 to TTL that goes into a telemetry radio. Both of those are fed by 5 volts, which I get from literally a car adapter thingy where it takes 12 volts in and gives you 5 volts out. I didn't remember how I had done this, and again, back to Deep South Robotics, he personally helped me do this. It's the RX coming out of this 232 to TTL to the RX on the telemetry radio. Really not intuitive. So I took time to craft that so I wouldn't forget that again, in case I needed to do that. What else? Oh, this is
Well, before you move on there, you say you're applying power to that converter and to the radio. Doesn't the GPS, when it's plugged into the GPS, doesn't it put out 5 volts on that board, or is that? No, I guess maybe it doesn't do that, because if it were USB, it would, but I guess plugging into RS-232, you don't have any source of power there. So I see what you're doing there. You probably could have just grabbed 5 volts off the GPS board somewhere, because I'm sure it's got a 5 volt, some kind of a 5 volt supply there, that instead of putting that extra adapter on there.
Yeah, that's a good point, because there is an old if you printers used to have this, I don't know what the connection is called, a square-ish looking connection, not to a USB. Here's one of those connectors on there. I don't know, I haven't ever checked to see if there's power there, but you're right, that does have some power, probably options to get off of it.
But I'm just thinking there might be some pins on the board somewhere that would be, just plug in a jumper wire to a pin that would have that kind of stuff. But I've never looked at your board, so I don't know what's there. It's just that you may just have something on the board that says this is 5 volts. You might be able to plug a wire into,
Yeah,
as opposed to trying to get it off a USB port or something. But that would be another option.
yeah, definitely.
And again, before we move on, you were saying you wrote some software to do your survey. Are you actually letting the receiver do the survey mode, or are you grabbing all the values and averaging yourself somehow?
This, so on the ESP30, the data is coming across here at 1 hertz. So it's coming from the GPS at 1 hertz. It's being averaged for a minute, and then every minute it posts to the Google Sheet, and then I just went down and averaged, 800 lines of data. So each of these lines is averaged for a minute, and then I averaged, those 800 entries or so to get the final result.
Because you'd probably be better off if you just put the receiver in survey mode and let it do all that stuff for you. When it's done, it'll say, oh, this is where I think I'm at. And an example of that, I think I just put in the chat, is that one from February Robotics. And he's got the steps to do that. Now, whether or not that directly applies to your ComNav, I was thinking that, he goes through the setup software that comes with Novatel to do this. And so I don't know if how well that compares to what you have. And the other thought I had was, I wondered, have you ever tried downloading the Novatel configuration software and see if that'll run directly on your ComNav board?
I haven't tried that. I saw your post this morning, and I thought, holy cow, that would be interesting. So I don't know if you stumbled across the Novatel download link or not, but I have not tried that. It would be interesting to try.
And
I mentioned briefly. Go ahead.
a good reason to try that is because when you run across somebody's thing saying, go into your Novatel configuration and do this, you'd actually be able to pull up that and run the configuration to make it work. Except that I don't know. I also said in that post, I said, what model of Novatel does your thing try to emulate? Because it might make a difference which configuration software you download. But maybe it's all close enough that, just grab one and see if it works and see if it'll talk to your board. And that thing on the that I posted, that the thing that I just put in the chat is he goes through and he basically says, plug the thing in, go into your, I think he says clear out the data, and then he says put it in survey mode and let it run for, however many hours. When it's done, it just automatically inside of your receiver, it will take that surveyed value and load it into wherever it needs to go. And he keeps saying, but make sure you always say save configuration when you're done. So once you've done that, it will, every time it starts up, it'll use that. So he says, first of all, he says, put it in survey mode and let it do that. And then make sure you turn survey mode off. So the next time you run it, it doesn't do that again. And then he says, once that's loaded in there, then say save configuration. It will automatically use that next time around. So I think you'd be better off doing that than try to do your own averaging on that. Or you could compare the two, run it one way and then go back and run it the other and see how that compares between the two.
Yeah, try as I might, using the current. So I watched his video as you had mentioned or suggested before, and I saw that, and so I was poking around, and the closest I could come is if I select set base in the OEM software, it comes up with a button that says get position. And if you press that, it will get the lat lon and altitude and write a fixed position command to the GPS. But as best I could tell, it's just the instantaneous position. It's not any sort of surveyed thing, and it doesn't give you any option about, survey for 60 minutes or whatever. Which was why I went down the path of, well, I guess I got to do a homebrew thing on my particular GPS. But
So that's the other reason to try to see if the Novatel software will run on yours, because if it does and you follow the steps, it knows how to configure your board to do that kind of stuff. So that I think that'd be worth looking into.
yeah, I'll see if I can figure out how to see which one of their boards that they cloned. There's a way to figure that out. Let's see what else. Oh, sort of an interesting thing that I discovered is that, the microcontroller is programmed to send an average sentence each minute or each 60 seconds, and it looks like it loses 4 seconds so each time, which means to me the process of getting something posted to a Google Sheet, on average looks like it's 4 seconds. So if you ever wanted to post something to a Google Sheet in a frequency more than, or the fastest, it looks like it'll round trip, make a 4-second round trip. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Anything else?
But you are including a timestamp there, so you know. Is that timestamp, did you generate that on your microcontroller board, or did Google Sheets stick that in there for you?
Google Sheets sticks it in there as part of the script to handle the message coming in. It posts, a date function.
If you have a convenient way on your microcontroller board to keep track of time, it'd be good to pass that along too, and that way you can compare the time when the microcontroller thought it was and the time that Google Sheets thought it was. And that way you'd have both, so you could, number one, compare them just to see, where that's coming in. And then secondly, if you need to know the actual times, you could pull it off, whatever the microcontroller said it was. So that's the time when the actual sample would have been generated. So
Yeah.
that might work out better for you too.
The other thing just to make note of is I took 2 sentences, these 2 best pos and GGA, because I was just curious whether they would be any different. And although some of the individual readings are different because the GGA is actually calculated, converted from I forget what they call that, into a decimal format. But anyway, bottom line is they came out to be almost exact, which I thought was interesting too. So,
Well, I think when they do that internally, they've got the latitude and longitude position and just format it for either the best pos or the GGA. So I think those probably internally are going to be the same number. Just another tidbit to keep in mind.
and so I think that was, yeah, so the next step is to bury the pipe, clean up the electronics on the holding container for the base station, mount the base station, get a shorter cable from the antenna to the base station, and figure out what I want to do about power, either pull 110 volts over or do some sort of battery power.
Yeah, you can either bury that pole or you can just put, somewhere on the ground that's identifiable. So you can just come back, even if you just had the thing, so you just lay it on the ground. If you just have some kind of a marker on the ground, you can just put it back. So you wouldn't have to, actually leave the pole there all the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, so if I just had a tripod, I'd just have to mark it, put the tripod over wherever it is marked.
Yeah. I suppose you could put like a stake down in the ground so it's, actually low enough that it's not going to affect mowing the yard or anything. And then, when you go there, approximately where it's at, so you poke around until you find that, and then yeah, put your tripod over the top of that.
I think that's a little bit of progress, and a couple things I picked up along the way. Still no luck on my older GPS though. Still Chinese New Year in Shanghai, so I don't think I'm going to get any feedback from those guys for a few more days.
Did you look at that to see, does it have some kind of a factory reset? Sometimes if you hold down the reset button while you're powered up, it might do a factory reset, or there might be some funny things like that you could do. That I just wonder if you tried any of that stuff. Look to see if you have that ability.
Yeah, I went back through the manual a couple times actually, looking for anything around surveys and anything around resets. The 2 resets that I found are referenced, just pulling the manual back up. Couldn't find anything about a hardware return to factory defaults. The most significant reset thing I could find was, oh, why can't I see the although that says factory you have to you have to be able to get it to accept a command, and right now it's not accepting accepting a command. The other reset that says hardware reset, I'm like, hey, that's going to do it. But this says, basically that's just getting you to a cold reboot. And again, it's a software deal. Nothing like you're, asking about holding down a button while you apply power or something.
Might search for a button and see if it mentions something about the reset button.
Yeah, see, my issue is it's it's not letting me get to something that what well, I'll show you what the command or what it on COM1, it has 3 COM ports, 1, 2, and 3, and on COM1, I see the light blinking. I'm like, oh, good, it's still alive, it's talking, and all that's being transmitted is this error, DCM error. And following a suggestion you made earlier, I looked for that, and I couldn't find anything, certainly from Novatel, that matched it. DCM might stand for, what was it? Some sort of calculation matrix. Anyway, and usually when you issue a command, like give me the version, that would be followed by an OK. But it's not, it's not responding to any commands. Even trying to do reset, it's just not talking to me.
If you go to your manual and just search for DCM, does that bring up anything?
Let's see. Where did that manual go? Crickets.
And you may have a space after that, so maybe see if you can delete that off. When you copied it, I think it got an extra space.
Yeah, there's
I guess it's not going to tell you.
so anyway. I don't think it's completely dead, only because it is at least spitting out something. But yeah, it's looking pretty glum.
Have you found anyone else out in the world that's using what you're using right now? So if you go do searches I see I did a search for ComNav DCM, and I see there are various, I don't know if they're manuals that are showing up, but here's a quick reference guide. Here's a ComNav Commander P2 installation and operation manual. That might be what you have right now. I
I
just
have
did,
found two. One is the guy from Deep South Robotics, and the other is the RTK lib review of GPSs, and he did a review of the ComNav stuff along with some others. It's not very prevalent. I mean, back in the day when I bought it, it was the Deep South Robotics guy was really the reason I bought it, because he was saying it was the cheapest RTK RTK GPS out there. And then the FP9 came along and got better, and so I think everybody went that way.
yeah, when I'm looking at the search, there are various, like installation manuals that are popping up, but it could be it's all the same, point to the same thing, but I don't know.
And what did you Google?
I just put in ComNav and DCM. I, no, I guess I put in ComNav, DCM, and error. And it's not finding anything on DCM error, but it's just saying, here's stuff. Here seem to be manuals. If I just search for it, there's still various manuals that show up if you just search for ComNav. What did I say? I said ComNav DCM, and it's still bringing up, references to various manuals around. And I don't know enough about it to know if those are all the same or not. So I was just thinking, if there's enough people out there, if enough people are using it, you should be able to type in that error. It should pop up and say, "Oh, I've got this error. What do I do about it?" And have people discussing that. But maybe that's not going to happen. So so anything else for this week?
Interesting that Garmin came up with a error. MCU and DCM have different set of wireless switches stored. That's interesting. I don't have anything else for recording.
Okay.